You know that voice inside your head, the one that says, I should get up, or why did I say that? That voice feels like you, right? But what if I told you, not too long ago in human history, that voice didn't even exist? Today we're talking about consciousness, not the mystical kind, but the messy, biological, deeply human kind. The kind philosophers and neuroscientists have wrestled with for centuries. And to explore it, I'm going to pull together two radically different takes: Daniel Dennett's Consciousness Explained and Julian Jaynes's The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. Let's start with Dennett. Dennett says that consciousness isn't a thing inside your head. It's not some glowing self or inner theater where your mind projects the movie of life. He calls that idea the Cartesian theater, and he thinks it's an illusion. According to Dennett, what we call consciousness is really just a bunch of parallel brain processes, competing, collaborating, and updating each other. There's no single place where it all comes together. Instead, our minds are more like a newsroom, lots of reporters working on different stories, and the you that feels in charge is just the editor reading the final version once it's already written. In other words, we don't experience reality as it happens. We experience a story our brain keeps revising milliseconds later. Consciousness is a narrative, a draft, constantly updated, never final. Now, let's jump to Julian Jaynes, and this is where things get wild. Jaynes had a theory that ancient humans, up until around 3,000 years ago, weren't actually conscious the way we are today. He said early humans lived with what he called a bicameral mind, basically a brain divided into two talking halves. One side gave commands, the other obeyed. The voice of the gods, those divine instructions people heard in ancient texts, were actually one hemisphere of the brain speaking to the other. So when someone in ancient Mesopotamia said, "The gods told me to fight," they weren't lying. They were literally hearing a voice, just like someone today with auditory hallucinations might. According to Jaynes, only when this system broke down, maybe due to growing complexity in societies, languages, and stress, did humans develop introspection, the I voice, the self that reflects and narrates. At first glance, Dennett and Jaynes sound worlds apart. Dennett says consciousness is a process, an emergent narrative created by competing brain functions. Jaynes says consciousness is a cultural invention, a late arrival in human evolution built on top of hallucinated commands. But here's where it gets interesting. Both agree that consciousness isn't some mystical soul or inner spark. It's something the brain does, not something it has. Dennett's model explains how our moment-to-moment awareness works, how the brain stitches perception, memory, and language into a fluid story. Jaynes explains when that story might have begun, how humans learn to internalize those voices, turning gods into thoughts and commands into choices. So if both are right, even partly, then consciousness isn't fixed. It's a moving target. What we call being conscious today might be just one stage in a long process of self-awareness, a process that could evolve again. Think about it. The ancient mind heard voices and obeyed. The modern mind hears one voice, its own, and reflects. What's next? A collective consciousness through technology? A post-linguistic kind of awareness through AI or direct neural connection? We might already be standing on the edge of another breakdown, the next leap in how minds understand themselves. Here's the takeaway. Consciousness isn't a light switch that flicks on. It's a story, a feedback loop between brain, language, and culture. Dennett showed us it's not a single thing, but a dynamic process. Jaynes showed us it's not timeless, but historical. It evolved. So maybe the real question isn't what is consciousness, but what is it becoming? Because if the mind is a story, we're still writing it.